Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt isn't even managing to convince the usual Trump sycophants at Fox that what she's saying is true.
After all of these threats to increase tariffs or turn off electricity, I wonder, does this administration still consider Canada to be a close ally of the United States?
Well, I think Canada is a neighbor. They are a partner. They have always been an ally. Perhaps they are becoming a competitor now. But as the president also laid out in his Truth Social post today, he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. And I actually looked into some of the research about the cost of living in Canada, and the cost of living is much higher than it is here in the United States of America. The average cost of a home in Canada is much higher. In Quebec, the highest tax rate for an income of $150,000 or more is 53.3%. More than half of Canadians' incomes they are being taxed on. So the president has made it clear that he believes Canadians would be better served economically, militarily, if they were to become the 51st state of the United States of America.
Egregious and insulting are your words here, but that's what many Canadian leaders have said about the actions President Trump has taken toward Canada. And what do you think the timeline is for speaking to Mr. Carney? Because normally a sitting president speaks to a close ally very quickly when there's new leadership.
Well, the president is, again, responding to the fact that Canada has been ripping off the United States of America and hardworking Americans for decades. If you look at the rates of tariffs across the board that Canadians have been imposing on the American people and our workers here, it is egregious. In fact, I have a handy-dandy chart here that shows not just Canada, but the rate of tariffs across the board. If you look at Canada, since you brought it up, American cheese and butter, nearly 300% tariff. You look at India, 150% tariff on American alcohol. You think that's helping Kentucky bourbon be exported into India? I don't think so.
President Trump insists U.S. manufacturers will be protected because tariffs will be paid by these countries. But it's not quite that simple. The so-called importer of record, the companies responsible for importing a product, are the ones that physically pay tariffs to the federal government. They are usually U.S. companies. Here, the tariffs are collected by Customs and Border Protection at 328 ports of entry across the country. That money goes to the general fund of the U.S. government, managed by the Treasury Department. Now, what happens is when someone ships something into the U.S., say they use FedEx, for example, the shipper fills out a declaration of what it is, how much it costs, and if that product is on the list for a tariff, FedEx would collect the fee where it came in and then transfer that to the U.S. Customs on site. The whole process, much more complex and complicated than the pro-tariff crowd usually describes.
If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies, they get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
Out there, he surveyed some cars. It was happening as Americans' 401k accounts were facing some struggles because of this tariff war happening right now. Was that an appropriate thing for the president to do there? Was it sensitive to the moment that we're in, buying a car, using the White House as a backdrop for that?
Well, first of all, he's promoting American-made products. I applaud him for doing that. He's not the first president to do that.
That I note is that, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he's unwilling to lift Canada's retaliatory tariffs. But we've got to remember we're dealing with two different tariffs I would say, strategies here. One is, I want you to do something about the border tariffs. And the other one is, you are not treating us fairly. Your tariffs on our automobiles, if you're Europe or someplace else in India, so we're dealing with reciprocal and or border tariffs, and all of them are adding up. Canada, I don't see where they get the leverage here.
Well, a huge part of the auto industry in the U.S. depends upon Canadian goods and car parts to make those items. So we do rely on them to a large extent in that regard. I mean, the whole Canada thing is a little bit strange. Last year, 21,000 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the U.S.-Mexico border, just over 40 pounds at Canada. So a lot of the reasons for this are a little bit questionable. I'm not exactly sure what the end game is here, other than maybe trying to make Canada the 51st state. But it seems strange that the approach towards Canada is what we would expect the president the way we would expect the president to act towards, say, North Korea. It's very unusual.
Be very interesting. I see that the Canadian Prime Minister is taking American alcohol and liquor off their store shelves. Not sure how long Canadians will put up with that.
When even Fox News is calling out your lies, you know that you've gone too far. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, with few exceptions, has proven itself utterly incapable of rising to the moment, making it hard to believe that the status quo can last much longer. Now, whether this leads to a dramatic shift in party leadership or a break from the party altogether certainly remains to be seen at this point, but Republicans have long banked on the public sleepwalking into authoritarianism. Now, though, people are beginning to grasp just how bad things are going to get. And it can feel hopeless watching mass deportations without due process, or the total disregard for the Constitution and the rule of law, and, the parade of rapists and abusers Trump keeps welcoming into the White House. But the center cannot hold. Conditions are ripe for major change. One thing is clear: the American people are waking up. If you enjoyed that, make sure that you never miss another video by subscribing. And if you want a little more, consider hitting the join button and becoming an actual member. But you're probably wondering, why the hell would I do that, John? First off, calm down. The stakes in this are very, very low. But also, when you click the join button and you become a member, you get access to bonus content that I make every week with Francesca Fiorentini, and it's a ton of fun. You get access to tons of custom emojis and more besides that. By the way, if you join at Tier 3, you even get access to a monthly member hangout with myself and other awesome people, and we always have a great time. By the way, you'll get all that going forward, but you also unlock years of the back catalog. That is literally 100 or more bonus clips, top 10 lists, debates, and more. What are you waiting for? Click the join button below. Your support powers our show, and we couldn't do it without you. Or at the very least, I wouldn't really want to try. Viewers like you keep me here, so thank you in advance for joining.